Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, the new patch brings with it some new characters for the Leagues of Votann. In this video, I will be showcasing the legendary character, Uthar the Destined. I'll cover his legendary release event in my usual style in a separate video. Uthar the Destined is a named Khal for the Leagues of Votann Faction. He is famous because he survived an event that should have killed him, an omen the kin interpreted as proof that the Votann had marked him for greatness. In battle, Uthar is a calm, calculating commander who leads from the front in heavy exo armor, wielding advanced kin weapons and backed by elite Hearthguard. On the tabletop, he is known for his ancestral fortune ability, which lets him manipulate fate, basically guaranteeing a key role every turn. He is a warrior lord for the Leagues of Votann, and Snowprint have translated those tabletop characteristics into game quite well. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support. If you're here for a 15-second summary, Uthar is a commander type character. His main value is around his passive, which provides a 2-hex aura that gives allies either additional armor or pierce ratio. His active gives him bonus crit and block chance and lets him make a melee attack as part of that activation. He is probably a jack of all trades character with a slight lean towards PvP modes. Uthar unlocks via legendary release event. I will do a detailed showcase for that in due course, but for now here is a summary of the legendary release event tracks and enemies. The various Tacticus websites will be updated shortly, but I also have my own Google Sheet that you can check out and edit to your heart's content. Onto his kit. As usual, the art department has done a phenomenal job with the model and animations. He has 2 traits, Resilient and the Votann Faction trait, Prioritized Efficiency. He has a melee plasma attack and a range 2 energy attack, both with 3 hits. He has a movement speed of 2, which I think is standard for Votann. He has a weapon and a crit booster, and despite being a Xenos faction character, he uses the Imperial Grenade as his booster item. His pictured stats are at max settings, but Tawan, Tacticus Ambassador and friend, has helped me make this radar chart for better visualization. Uthar has a pretty chunky radar chart, reflecting above average stats. His active ability is called Ancestral Fortune. It is reasonably straightforward. It gives him bonus crit and block chance until the start of his next turn, and if Uthar is adjacent to an enemy, he immediately performs a plasma attack against it. After a number of attacks that have a crit, or the attacks that Uthar blocks, the ability is reset. His passive ability is Grim Efficiency. It provides armor or pierce ratio depending on Uthar's stance. I think the idea is that when Uthar is on the battlefield, Votann get both sides of their faction trait. They can be extra mobile and still gain bonus armor, or they can be more defensive and still have increased damage output through the pierce ratio bonus here. The nice thing is that those benefits extend beyond the Votann and are provided to any ally within 2 hexes. We can take a look at how everything works with some gameplay. In the first clip, Uthar uses his active, and because he is in melee, he makes a plasma damage attack as described. You can see the buff icon under his profile that indicates his bonus crit and block chance. After using the active, if you click on the ability icon, the tooltip will tell you how many attacks or blocks you need for things to reset. Fairly straightforward. The passive also isn't too hard to understand. Allies in range 2 initially start with bonus armor, indicated by the cool orange glow under their character model and also by the buff under their portrait. Once Uthar's stance changes, so too does the buff that he confers to his allies, and we get a nice visual change to their aura as well. When our character moves out of buff range, the visual display disappears. It's worth pointing out that the passive buff doesn't apply to Uthar himself. I've gone into a bit more depth on the faction trait in my Vin showcase, but in essence it either provides bonus damage and movement or reduces damage taken depending on the stance you're in. When a Votann character uses their active, it flips a switch and the entire faction's stance changes for the following turn. Use 2 actives and you're back to the starting stance, Hostile Acquisition. Uthar's Relic is the Blade of the Ancestors. Each time a friendly character dies or kills an enemy unit, Uthar gains crit chance and damage, kind of like the Adeptus Sororitas faction trait. Once he crits, the bonus resets. On one hand, he counts deaths or kills from any faction, not just Imperials. On the other hand, this relic only looks at characters, not summons, which does diminish its utility. As of yet, we don't know how the relic will be found. I think it's a nice one, and there are potentially some scenarios where it is valuable against raid side bosses like Corodius, but overall I wouldn't put this into a top tier. Uthar's Mythic Missions are listed on screen. The only potentially tricky one is Mission 4, which requires stuns. It is possible we see stun as an effect from the other characters in the faction. Since Uthar is a Xenos character, you won't be able to do these missions in the current campaigns. Before we wrap up, let's take a look at his performance by trait in Legendary Release Event. Uthar has Plasma Damage, Energy Damage, and the Resilient trait. The Plasma Damage trait is pretty niche. It is full of characters that frankly aren't amazing in this game mode, and I think if this ever does become an LRE track, then Uthar is going to be super important due to his defensive aura. I've put him in the good tier for now. For energy damage, after the arrival of Uthar, there will only be 5 characters for a theoretical energy damage requirement. I would be pretty surprised if this ends up being an LRE requirement, but ultimately, here, the bonus armor from his passive would also make him a really important piece. Finally, resilient. We have a similar problem to power damage, where we already have established characters who are really good for this trait, so you don't really need Uthar to add more depth. I haven't listed cutoffs for ability thresholds here since you can get those fairly easily on any Tacticus website. On screen here is the character summary in my usual infographic style. Thanks once more to Tawan, Tacticus ambassador and friend, for his help here. That all leads us to consider where the character might shine. Let's start with Horde modes. Honestly, the bit that I'm most excited for Uthar is around his passive ability. He can provide a 2-hex armor buff aura. Aesop is the only other character in the game with this ability, but that armor buff is lower and more conditional. I think that Uthar's passive armor boost will hugely improve your team's survivability in wave-based combat, and for that reason I've given him a 4 here. What about War? I think his kit is reasonable here, providing either more tankiness or punch, depending on what the scenario merits. I think he is a fine to above average character in this mode. Maybe I'm undervaluing him, but he isn't jumping out to me as a standout here, so I've given him a 3 and that might be generous. Finally, Raid. He doesn't really have a raid kit unless you are building around crits or using the extra armor to tank boss abilities. I can't see him in an existing meta team and have therefore given him a 1.5 here. These are slightly disappointing scores for a legendary release character, and maybe we will see more from his faction that raises his stock, but I'm not rushing to build around him. In a game of scarce resources, I personally value characters that are really good in one mode rather than these jack-of-all-trade characters. They tend to offer less incentive to build in this sort of context. I'll maybe sign off there. I hope that was useful and you enjoy playing with Uthar. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support, and bye for now.